Okay, I think we're ready to start. Good. Do we have a thumbs up? We're ready, or are we waiting for anybody specific? We're good.
She on, Rachel?
Okay, I'm going to mute everybody. All right, we're going to start in a moment. It's nice to see everybody. Thank you, everyone, for joining us. And we're going to start. Okay. So nice to see everybody. Good evening. And this week we're going to be learning the Zera Shimshon Wednesday night like we normally do. Parashat Nasso, that's the second Torah portion in the fourth book of our 5 books of Moses, for those of us, just as a recap. And I'd like to mention tonight's sponsors. Again, thank you all those who have sponsored our classes. It's a tremendous merit, and it means a lot to me and to all of the viewers worldwide. So thank you very much. It's always funner to be online Zoom and listening to it live, especially that you could text me in the middle of the class or wait till the end to ask your questions. So a really big thank you to all of our sponsors for all of the classes that we've been doing. So tonight we have 2 sponsors, and I want to thank them. I want to mention them. The first is Alan and Cindy Feller, in memory of their beloved son, Scott Michael Feller. His Hebrew name, Shalom Moshe Ben Shoshana, who was their firstborn, also brother to Jeremy and Tracy. He was the grandson of Jerry and Janet Feller, may they rest in peace, and also grandson to Stanley and Arlene Roth, may they live and be well. Just something small about Scott, that he was an extreme athlete, excelling in baseball in college and minor league levels. He was the first Israeli, he joined the first Israeli league baseball team, which is something very, very special. He was a sweet, loving, and gentle boy who took to all, and especially to those with special needs and underdogs. So he had a really big heart, and he cared for so many. He would walk into a room and he would light it up just by his very own presence being there. He was very handsome, but his kind soul shined even brighter. So next week on June 8th is going to be his second yahrzeit, something very, very devastating, very hard for the family. And may his soul have an elevation through the Torah study that we're learning not only tonight, but also tomorrow night. So thank you, Alan and Cindy Feller, for sponsoring both tonight's class and tomorrow night's class in memory of your son. Next is Stephanie and Mayor Friedman, in memory of Stephanie's uncle, Herbert Chaim Edelstein, who was also a very special individual. He dedicated his life to his family and to his community at large by being a firefighter as well as a male nurse. Something very beautiful and something very caring. So may their souls, along all the others, all the other deceased ancestors, family members, friends who have passed on, have an elevation through tonight's class. And may tonight also serve as a refuah shlema, speedy recovery to all those who are in need of a true refuah shlema, a quick and speedy recovery in the merit of the Zera Shimshon. Amen v'amen. We're going to start with this week's Torah portion. And before we get into the Zera Shimshon, because the Zera Shimshon's insight tonight is going to be so important and so practical to us all, before we get into that, I want to just give maybe a little bit of an overview of this week's Torah portion. And I'm going to do something a little bit different. I used to do this in the past before I started giving this class, is I want to break down the 7 aliyot, and I'm going to explain what that means for us. Of this Torah portion. So this way we get a nice synopsis and overview of what we're actually going to be learning, and as well as reading this Shabbat, this Saturday. So as a general overview, this week is unique in the fact that it is the longest Torah portion in our entire Torah, weighing in at 176 pounds, at 176 psukim verses, weighing in at the longest Torah portion in our entire Torah, greater than Genesis, the first parasha, or any other Torah portion. It is the longest, and we're going to address that in a moment and why that is. The reading starts with the continuation of the Levite census that Moses is counting them all in regarding to the discussion of the Mishkan, the tabernacle, and all those duties. Then the laws of the Sota woman and the Nazarite follow, which we'll explain. And then the portion concludes with the priestly blessings as well as the offerings of the tribal leaders in honor of the inauguration of the tabernacle. So that's just a general overview. Now, if we just go step by step, the first section, so when we read the Torah on Shabbat, we split it up into 7, what's called an aliyot. An aliyah means to come up. And that's because 7 men are called up to the Torah to bless on the Torah prior to it being read. So there's 7 specific portions, 7 men come up, and we make a blessing. So the first section, so we're going to call these sections just to make it easy for us. The first section deals with nominating and splitting up and counting specifically the different families within the tribe of Levi, specifically Gershon and Merari, and what each of them would have as a duty to carry while traveling with the tabernacle. The second, again, goes on to count them. So the first one tells us the first section tells us what their function was in the traveling in the wilderness. And then the second section, it counts those 2 families, Gershon and Merari. Then the third section speaks about the laws regarding sending someone out of the camp if they would contract any impurity, such as a metzora, a leper, or anyone who has a spiritual discharge, and so on, or someone who comes in contact with a dead body. All of those laws, as well as the laws of God forbid, someone who would allow them to steal from a convert, how severe that is and how they would be punished, and obviously the commandment not to do so. The fourth section speaks about the sota, which is, I'm going to just briefly say it. We're going to get more into it. It's a woman who's accused for being an adulteress, and what happens with her. We'll speak about it. And then there is the Nazir, the Nazarite, which is explained. The last 3 sections, that's 5, 6, and 7, all speak about the sacrifices that were offered by the princes of each of the tribes of Israel during the inauguration of the tabernacle. So that is listed. So going back to why is this the longest Torah portion in our entire Torah? Now, of course, everything is deliberate and everything is very specific from God. However, it's important to note why this is the longest, and that would be because the end of this week's Torah portion repeats the exact same offering for each and every one of these heads of tribes, for each and every one of these princes of the tribe. They all came and they all served the exact same thing. The truth is this is a very long Torah portion. It's the longest, right? And it's every bar mitzvah boy's nightmare. Like every all the kids, when they start getting to grade 6 and grade 7, and they start sharing each other, so what's your Torah portion and what's your bar mitzvah parsha? And so no one wants to ever be stuck with, so to say, Parashat Nasso, because it is the longest. But even though it's the longest, half of it, almost half of this Torah portion is redundant. It's the same paragraph that is going repeated 12 times. And that is, as I said, each of the heads of tribes, they came. The only difference is the name of the person bringing that offering and the tribe that he's from. But it is practically the same. It's very, very easy in that aspect. So now, I would like to, as an introduction to the Zera Shimshon, offer a fascinating insight. This insight I read years ago from Rabbi Friend. Any of you who've listened to or learned or read Rabbi Yisachar Friend's beautiful insights really, really will appreciate this, because this is, in my opinion, one of his greatest gems. And he has plenty gems, but listen to the following observation Rabbi Friend makes. He says, he quotes a midrash. So again, the question is, why would every single tribe bring the same offering? Shouldn't, as Jews, we pride ourselves over the concept of individuality, of being unique, of being special, of being different? So every single Jew, every single leader of the tribes are going to bring the exact same offering? So Rabbi Friend answers it with a midrash. This midrash, I think, is a breakthrough to the way us as human beings, Jews, and specifically community members, have to be considerate for one another. And listen to the following. The Midrash relates that the first prince of all the tribes that was welcomed and gifted to bring on the very first day their offering to the inauguration of the temple of the tabernacle was for the tribe of Judah. The tribe of Judah's prince, his name was Nachshon ben Aminadav. This is a very clicky name. We've all heard this name before. You know why? Because this was the very individual who jumped first into the sea for the sea to split. Just to jog our memories, the Jewish people exit Egypt. On their way out, they get stuck. On the seventh day, they find themselves stuck at the sea. They don't know where to go. In back of them is the Egyptians coming to kill them, and in front of them is a sea. Moses prays to God. God says, just go forward. The Jewish people look at Moses and said, where are we supposed to go? We're supposed to swim? Are we growing fins and scales and we're all of a sudden amphibians? We're able to breathe underwater as well? No, obviously not. Nachshon ben Aminadav jumped in first from the tribe of Judah. And because of that great act, he was nominated as the prince for the tribe of Judah. So the Midrash relates that on the very first day, as the Torah says, he brings, and I count with you, a young bull, a sheep, a he-goat, 5 cattle, 5 ram, and 5 other sheep. That's a total of 18 different animals. Chai, beautiful, right? So he brings these 18 animals. Everyone was awed, awesome, beautiful, great. Then on day 2, explains the Midrash, the second prince of the second tribe, meaning the prince of the second tribe is going to come. And now he is faced with a dilemma. What is he going to bring? So mind you, Nachshon ben Aminadav from the tribe of Judah, he wasn't told by anyone what to bring. He specifically selected those 18 animals and he brought them. Now on day 2, the prince of the tribe of Yisachar, his name was Netanel ben Tzuar. He's faced with a dilemma. What is he going to bring? Now, the Midrash says, what could the ramifications possibly be of this decision? I want to pause that Midrash now and give you a Bar-Mitzvah analogy. Imagine attending a synagogue, being part of a community, where there are 12 consecutive weeks in the same synagogue, in the same community, of bar mitzvahs. Every single week, without fail, no missing one. And food is served, and the first week is glamorous and lavish, and the second week tries to outdo the first week, and then the third outdoes the second, and on and on and on. Can you imagine the anxiety levels of that poor family, that simple, good family, on the 12th week? What are they going to do that's going to outdo everybody else? Something new that no one has ever seen, no one has ever eaten before. What can their son say or perform that no one has ever done before? And the Midrash says all this was going through Netanel's mind, the leader, the prince of the second tribe. In his mind, the concept of escalation was rushing through. He said, if I'm going to bring something greater or more than my predecessor, then what I'm in essence doing is I'm bringing in a sense, I'm bringing in a feeling, a philosophy and ideology of competition, of the need, the feeling to outdo the others. Now, what would be if he would have not brought 18, he would have brought 36 animals. And then what? Every single tribal leader to follow would have to do more than the previous ones? And if one didn't, oh, look how cheap he is. Look how unable he is. To the contrary, as great as Nachshon ben Aminadav was as the first tribal leader, to only bring 18 animals, which is still great, but not 180 or not 1,800, the Midrash says, you know who the great hero was? The great hero was Netanel ben Tzuar, the tribal leader for the second tribe. Because when he came and he did exactly what the previous tribal leader brought, he then set a precedent. He then set a rule that each and every one of the tribal leaders to follow are going to do the exact same. crushing at the onset of the Mishkan, at the onset of the inauguration of this tabernacle, which is supposed to unite the Jewish people and bring them closer and unite them to their Lord, to God. He crushed all competition and that feeling and that urge and that need that human beings have to outdo each other. So in life, we find ourselves having to follow the very famous saying of keeping up with the Joneses, right? It's become something which is so natural and so normal, but it's wrong on so many levels. When we do something, we need to do it for ourselves. The vacations you take are not for the pictures you take and then you show it to everybody else. No, if you're taking pictures, great, that's for you and your family to remember and to bring back those fond memories. The clothes you wear, the car you drive, the house you live in, all of these things are meant to do for ourselves to enjoy at a certain level, for ourselves to elevate that physicality in order to cling closer to our Creator, to God, through the physicality, reaching higher spiritual heights. What type of message do we send our children when we're keeping up with the Joneses? A horrible one. One of never being satisfied with anything that we have. One of just subscribing to the rat race that the rest of the world is just constantly running after. It leaves children insecure. We ourselves become insecure. So the tribes were very, very diligent in maintaining this. Each and every one followed suit with the previous tribe. But to which tribe and which leader is the great merit? It's the second one. It's Netanel ben Suar. Maybe that gives us a whole new outlook on the name Natanel. Natanel means God gave, which is a beautiful name. But now we even have another idea. How come Natanel is such a beautiful name? Because he stood up and he preserved the unity, the harmony, and the lack of competition by the inauguration of the temple, which we read about in this week's Torah portion. They each brought the same 18 animals. And that's what's being repeated 12 times, identically over and over and over. Now, one more observation before we get into the Zera Shimshon is that as we described, these princes were very, very wealthy. They did not look to cheap out. They could have easily brought 180 animals, 1,800 animals, no problem. It wouldn't have hurt their bank at all. But there is an interesting observation that can be seen, and I'm going to share with you the verse. It is, here we go. Take a look at this verse. This is in Numbers chapter 7, verse 3. It says, and this is talking about when all of the tribes were bringing everything that they came to offer to the tabernacle. They went, they collected everything, and they brought it. Look at this. Vayaviu et korbanam lifnei Adonai. They brought their offering before the Lord. Shesh eglot tzav u'shneasar bakar. It says that they came with 6 covered wagons and 12 oxen, meaning 2 ox carrying each wagon. And then it says, Agala al shnei anesiim v'shor le'echad vayakrivu otam lifnei hamishkan. A wagon for each 2, I don't know what that word means. Sorry, cheftons? Okay, which means the leaders of the tribes, the tribal leaders, the princes of the tribes. What this verse in essence is telling us, and I think it's quite obvious, I think it's a beautiful observation. What this verse is telling us is that these great tribal leaders did not come with their own cargo. They did not all wind up and roll up in their own Rolls Royces. To the contrary, it seems from this verse that the tribal leaders were trying to carpool or cut corners or share or save on the shipping freight. Because what each one did was, they said, okay, you need to bring and I need to bring, so let's share a cab. Let's share an 18-wheeler to bring it there. And each of the tribes coupled up. But 1 second. Didn't we say that they could have brought so much more? None of this broke their bank anyways. So to this, on the same idea, the atmosphere during the inauguration could have been very tense. It could have been full of competition. But you know what the tribes did, each and every one? They each committed to a concept. They prescribed to the higher calling of unity. They each came sharing in the transportation, not because they needed to, not because they were trying to save on it, because they were showing that they are coming ish echad belev echad, one person with one heart. Even though there were 12 different tribes, we have to remind ourselves that until the book of Bamidbar, and this I read of blessed memory from Rabbi Aryeh Leib Heyman, a fascinating Torah scholar, which hopefully in the upcoming months we're going to learn a lot more about him. But I was learning with his son-in-law this week, and we read an amazing concept. And the concept was, if you look at the book of Genesis, the book of Genesis is the book of our fathers. It's a family. The book of Exodus, it's still our family. It's a small nation that is starting to grow, but it's still a family. The book of Vayikra, the book of Leviticus, the third book, is speaking about the construction of the tabernacle, the service in the tabernacle, but it's still all things that promote unity. Right now, when we come to the book of Numbers, the book of Bamidbar, explains Rabbi Heyman, is the time where the Jewish people unfortunately now start to separate. What causes the separation? That's by attributing each person, prescribing them to their rightful tribal leader, being part of a tribe, their tribal association. And what that does, unfortunately, it causes difference, it causes separation. For the first time now, we see the difference between a Kohen, a Levi, and an Israel. Different segments amongst the Jews. So now, what are these great leaders, the princes of the tribes, doing? They are showing that we prescribe to unity. You know how we prescribe to unity? No competition. We're all bringing the same amount. And we're even coming and we're sharing in the transportation. Not because we need to, but to show that we are all united. And this is an amazing concept. It's something that we need to remember, these two concepts. Number one, of not always having this feeling, this urge, this need to outdo everyone else. Everyone's supposed to live according to their means, not to be flashy or show off. Be happy with what they have, content with what they have, feel blessed with what they have. And the second is this concept of unity. Unfortunately, the lack of unity is what splits families apart, splits communities apart, friends apart. We need to learn it from these great leaders. They were not leaders because they were just randomly chosen. No, they were great individuals. And we are all leaders in our own lives, leaders in our homes, with our families, in our community, at work, and we can set the stage. Yes, as a business owner, there is an aspect to having healthy competition between your employees, especially if they're in sales. We understand. But there's a difference between healthy competition to promote generating business and competition which turns to be malicious, and competition which just is for the sake of competition, not for the sake of the end goal. And that's something we need to steer ourselves away from. With that introduction, I want to now jump into an earlier part of this week's Torah portion, something that the Zera Shimshon himself addresses. I'm going to share the verse with you. And as an introduction to seeing this verse, I would like to say that the Torah this week discusses the obligation of a fellow Jew to care for his or her fellow. And it's so important. And specifically this week, what we speak about, the Torah reminds us about, is taking care of the Kohen, taking care of the Jewish priests. And the reason for this is, and it's important that we know why, the reason for this is because a Kohen, the entire tribe of Levi, and the Kohanim themselves, they dedicated their lives to the service in the tabernacle, which then continued on to the service of the temple. That was their lives. there were 24 families, specific Kohen families, broken up, and each family had an opportunity to serve in the temple or in the tabernacle 2 weeks a year. And yeah, there was a little bit of an overlap, but that was their life. 2 weeks a year, plus the holidays. They were all in the temple or in the tabernacle. And you know what they did the rest of the year? They would be learning in the yeshivas, learning in the Torah academies. They would be learning and perfecting and practicing their service for when that time comes that they have to do their service in the temple. They were also the school teachers. They were the scholars. What the Torah is telling us is, remember that the Kohanim don't have land of their own. They're not farmers. They don't work their land. They have no other source of income. So it's incumbent upon the rest of the nation, the other vast majority of the nation, to support these people. Because without these great people, the temple could not be run, the service would not run as smoothly and conduct in a proper way. And there would be a lack of Torah study, a lack of Torah leadership, a lack of educators if it were not for these people who commit themselves to the study and the service of the Torah. So look at the verse that Zera Shimshon shows us. It is right here. Numbers chapter 5, verses 9 and 10. Please take a look at your screen. It says, V'chol teruma lechol kodshei b'nei Yisrael asher yakruvu lakohen yiheh. Every offering of all the children of Israel's holy things, meaning all of the gifts that they were obligated to bring to the Kohanim, which is brought to the Kohen, shall be his. Mental note. Lo yiheh shall be his. Next verse. V'ishet kodashav lo yiheh. Everyone's holy things shall be his. Again, references the Zera Shimshon. But not only twice, a third time. Ish asher yiten lakohen lo yiheh. Whatever a man gives to the Kohen shall be his. The Zera Shimshon wants to know, what's going on over here? We know it shall be his. Just say straight out, anything that you give to the Kohen is the Kohen's. Why is it going over, it shall be his, it shall be his, it shall be his, 3 times? This is what the Zera Shimshon this week asks. And before we give the Zera Shimshon's answer, I want to share a very interesting story that I read. And I think it's a perfect answer, besides for the Zera Shimshon's answer, which is so clear and precise. So listen to the following story. The story is as follows. There was a very famous Rosh Yeshiva of the Slobodka Yeshiva. This takes us back to 1924, a little bit before our time, okay? The Rosh Yeshiva's name was Rabbi Moshe Mordechai Epstein. And he came to America in 1924 to raise funds for the yeshiva. And during his visit, he would always come and see very, very generous individuals who would like to help. And there came a time where they made a decision, him and the founder and the dean of the yeshiva, Rabbi Nassim Tzvi Finkel, very, very famous rabbi, as many of us have heard of. And they came to the decision that the yeshiva had to split for safety issues and reasons. And what they did was they opened up a branch of the yeshiva in the old city of Hebron in Israel. And they said that we're going to send 150 students to this new location. But in order to establish this new location, they needed a monumental undertaking to require a large sum of, get ready, and this sum was enough to transport, house, and establish this yeshiva with 150 students. A whopping $25,000. Okay? I mean, today that would be a dream, right? But back in the day, right, almost 100 years ago, that was a lot of money. So Rabbi Epstein himself came to America with the task of raising this $25,000. He came to an individual who was known to be very generous and a philanthropist in his own right. His name was Mr. Schiff. And Mr. Schiff told him that he wanted to take the complete undertaking upon himself. And he gave the rabbi, $25,000. Just 6 years later, in the 1930s, when there was a Great Depression, unfortunately, Mr. Schiff lost everything he had. We're talking about a person who was very affluent, very capable, and lost everything to the point where, at the crash of the stock market, he lost everything. He had to go and shelter himself in the basement of a building that was many stories high that he used to own. He had to go and crumple up into a corner in the basement and sleep there. That's how unfortunate he was. It was very, very difficult. The same rabbi came along. Not the rabbi. The rabbi himself, Rabbi Epstein, fell sick, and his son-in-law, Rabbi Yecheskel Sarna, he now was going and collecting because it was a global crash. So he came to collect for the yeshiva, and he heard about this unfortunate Mr. Schiff who lost everything that he had. And he happened to attend a dinner where Mr. Schiff was the keynote speaker, encouraging people to give towards the cause of whatever this charity was. And he heard Mr. Schiff saying, this Rabbi Sarna came, and he heard Mr. Schiff saying something so meaningful. And this really means a lot, and we should all take these words to heart. He says, "My dear friends," this is what Mr. Schiff, this ex-millionaire, right? Unfortunately. He says, "My dear friends, I don't wish my business misfortunes onto anybody. It's very, very hard. I've invested literally millions of dollars in all sorts of businesses my entire life. And let me tell you something, they've all failed. I have absolutely nothing to show for any of them." We're talking after the Great Depression in 1929. This was no joke. Okay? This makes the recent stock crash, which was devastating, a piece of cake compared to that. So listen to what he says. He says that there was one investment that I made that continues to bear fruit. And he says it was a $25,000 investment that he gave to establish the yeshiva in Hebron. That's the one and only best investment that he has ever made that still bears fruit today. At that point, Rabbi Sarna went to go see him. And Mr. Schiff thought that he's coming and asking for more money. He's like, "I don't have anything to give." He said, "No, I want to tell you that your words were so meaningful. That was worth more than any amount of money." And he phoned back his father-in-law in Israel, Rabbi Epstein, and he told him the situation. And between the two of them, they were able to put together $5,000. Back then was a lot of money, to lend to this Mr. Schiff, to get him back up on his feet and get up to the glory and the wealth that he had previously, and it happened. Why do I share with you this story? I share this story because in a mystical manner, our Torah is teaching us what the power of an eternal gift is. The truth is we all know it's very hard to part with things that we own or that we've created or that we've made. But the Torah is telling us that whatever is holy to us, whatever we've exerted, we've given a piece of ourselves into, that's the only thing that is yours. Again, this is not the literal translation of the verse. The literal translation of the verse is that as a giver, you have the opportunity, the choice to decide where you want your gift to go. Back in the time of the Kohanim and the Leviim, in the time of the temple, we were able to choose which Kohen we wanted our Trumot and Masrot to go to. The gifts that the Kohanim deserved, we could choose that you wanted to go to this specific Kohen and this specific Kohen because you've built a relationship with them and their family and their parents maybe. That's what it means, lo yiheh. Alternatively, lo yiheh means that once you give it to the Kohen, it's fully theirs. That's it. You can't come back and take it. But I'm offering a different interpretation this evening. The interpretation I'm giving tonight is one that I'm going to reiterate very shortly in a very brief story that we might have all heard before. It's a fascinating one. But that is that the only thing we really have in life is what we've given. Nothing else is secure. Nothing else is really ever there. You see, we buy, we build, we spend, but what do we really have? at the end of a long and a hopefully long day in our lives, what do we think? What do we have? It's not our stocks. It's not our buildings. That can all crumble, unfortunately. How real is our estates? The Torah is telling us, lo yeh, 3 times, which is a chazakah, which means something very strong in Jewish law. 3 times the Torah says, what you give to the Kohen is yours. Meaning, that's your true merit. That's really what you have. What we invest in the eternity of our spirituality, that's ours. That is God's eternal message in the Torah this week. We can never relinquish that. Our investment in the eternity of supporting and helping others who've committed themselves to God, that is all that remains to be ours. And the similar story, and with this I'm going to jump into the Zera Shimshon's answer, and a similar story is the very famous Rabbi Don Yitzchak Abarbanel, one of the great medieval scholars, known more than just for his Torah scholarship and Torah wisdom, but also for his political ties. He was a royal advisor to the King of Spain. And at one time, he was also a very affluent Jew. And one time, the other Gentile advisors of the king all said that Jewish advisor is robbing you dirty, he's stealing from you. You have to get rid of him. And the king didn't want to, and he said, well, let's test him. Ask him how much he has. How much does he have? So the king summoned Rabbi Don Yitzchak Abarbanel, and he summons him and he asks him, how much is your worth? So the rabbi, in numbers of today, said, $5 million. Nice amount of money, right? So the king looks at him, looks at his advisor and says, see, he said the truth. That's a lot of money. The advisors pulled out records and says, no, he has multiple times more than that. He's lying to you, sire. He's lying to you. So the king comes back to the rabbi and he says, I have records here proving you have multiple times $5 million to your name. So the rabbi looks at him and he tells him, Your Highness, you asked me how much I have. You want to know the true answer to that is? Is none of that is really mine. None of that is secure. But there is something that is secure. And that is 10% of what I have, because that 10% has been given to charity. And that, and only that, is something which is truly mine. Nobody can take that merit away from me. And to that, the king was awed, respected it, and silenced the other advisors. We see a reoccurring theme that the Torah is telling us, Lo yeh, that shall be yours, that shall be for him, meaning the only thing that we really have is our good deeds, our good merit. And when it comes to finances, it's not what we have, it's what we've given. And to those of us who have the opportunity to either have given in the past or do give, there's a feeling of satisfaction, a feeling of that willingness to want to help and feel able to help, which is second to none. And each person in their own realm and at their own level. To a person, $100 donation towards a worthy cause means everything, because God sees how much that really, I don't want to say hurt, because any amount hurts to give. It's human nature, and God understands that. But how difficult it was to muster that up, and God counts that and considers that $100 from that person more than $10,000 from someone who they don't even feel it, so to say. What God likes to see is our efforts, and we've spoken about this time and time again. Once he sees our efforts in what we do, and specifically on tonight's topic of giving, then that merit becomes eternal and can never be taken away from a person. With this introduction, I'm sorry it took so long, but I thought it was very important just to give this. Now the Zera Shimshon goes and he gives his answer to why the Torah is redundant to say 3 times over that when you give to the Kohen, it shall be his. We know that, says the Zera Shimshon, amongst others, every word, every letter, every drop of ink in the Torah is divine calculated. How can it be that it says it 3 times over? So he answers based on what the Maimonides says. The Rambam gives a fascinating law. The beginning of the law, the laws of Trumot and Masrot, the gifts that were obligated to be given to the Kohen. And he writes in the beginning over there that according to the Torah, tithing one's produce only has to be done from the land of the land of Israel. Meaning, if you have a field outside the land of Israel, you don't need to tithe it. You don't need to give any percentage to the Kohen. That's according to the Torah, and it's very clear. However, the Rambam, the Maimonides, explains the prophets came and they said not only the lands of Israel need to be tithed, but also any produce from the lands of Shinar need to be tithed as well. Now, Shinar, explains Zera Shimshon, was the place where most of the Jews lived during the times of the prophets. It's on the outskirts of Israel. Then came a third wave, and this was the early sages. The early sages says also Egypt, the lands of Egypt, Ammon and Moab, also need to be tithed and given their tithing of the produce to the Kohen. Why? Because it was very close to where the Jews lived, and it was very common and obvious that Jews might have some fields there as well. But remember, according to the Torah, only land in Israel by Torah law needs to be tithed. Yes, then the land of Shinar was added by the prophets, and then by the early sages, the lands of Egypt, Ammon, and Moab were added. Now, the Zera Shimshon goes on and he quotes the Talmud in Masechet Brachot. He says on page 63a that one should give in order that they shall have. The Talmud wants to know, what does that mean? Give to have what? The Talmud says clearly, you want to have money? You want to have wealth? Share it. Prove to God that you're a great pipeline, that you are a righteous conduit for that he has bestowed upon you. And why is that? Because you'll be blessed by God. You will have, because you will have God's blessing. God will be your partner in your endeavor. See, what God does is he says, let's take, for example, Joel. Joel, you want to be my partner? Of course I want to be your partner, God. Very good. I'm a very easy partner. I'm probably the best partner you'll ever have. I'll have no input in your decisions. You do it the way you want it to be done. But don't forget me. My deal is I will bless you with a divine blessing as long as you make sure that you give me my 10%. It's like a contract that we have with God. Give him his 10%. He's going to keep on doing his end of the deal. His end of the deal is blessing, is success. You try to cut back on your end of the deal by being stingy, not giving to God. God's not going to keep his deal with you. It's a simple transaction. Now it's way easier said than done, but it's something which the Talmud tells us. We're going to get back to it in a moment, but the Zera Shimshon now answers. You know why Lo Yeh says 3 times? It shall be for him, 1. It shall be from him, twice. It shall be for him, 3 times. Because the Zera Shimshon says that what the Torah is hinting to is to those 3 categories of obligation to tithe. Not only that of the land of Israel, but also that of the land of Shinar. Not only the land of Shinar, but also the lands of Egypt, Moab, and Ammon. Those 3 levels need to all be tithed. Not only the lands in the land, not only the produce from the land of Israel. And this, explains Zera Shimshon, is what's going to guarantee the blessing, the success, and the wealth of the Jewish people. This is where the Zera Shimshon finishes off, and I want to give you my insight on this. And I think it's very true. And at the end of the class, if anyone wants to argue with me on this, I am so open to another interpretation. But to me, this is so blatantly clear. But I like being challenged. That's what makes me learn too. Okay, listen to the following. Why is it that the prophets that the Rambam explains and the early sages that the Rambam explains added to the Torah's commandments? We know we're not allowed to add. It has to be a very clear and specific reason when our sages ever add on the Torah obligations. So when I read this piece earlier this week, I was thinking, to what reason What allowed these prophets and these sages to add on more? You know what that means? That means that not only the lands of Israel, but you're like doubling, tripling, quadrupling the amount of tithing, the amount of obligation of giving to the Kohanim that needs to be done. So listen to what I saw, what I thought of. What I thought of was because these prophets and these early sages, they saw where the Jews were living. They weren't living in the land of Israel primarily. And they said, in order for them to succeed, they need to give these gifts to the Kohanim. That's the secret to our success as Jews. And if the majority of the Jews are living in the land of Shinar, and the majority of the Jews are living outside the land of Israel in Egypt and Ammon and Moab, well, if they want to succeed, they need to prescribe to this way of success, this prescription for success. And I want to apply it to nowadays as well. See, the Rambam wrote it, and the prophets and the early sages, they wrote it back in their time. But nowadays, as Jews, since we're scattered all over the world, all over this globe, you can find Jews, thank God, anywhere over the world. We cannot forget to take care of and I'm putting in brackets, or not in brackets, anyways, the Kohanim, in quotations. Thank you, Mom. We cannot forget the Kohanim. What I mean by that is all those who dedicate their lives to the service of God, the Torah scholars, the Torah institutions, the Torah academies, the Torah schools. These people dedicate their lives to God and to the Jewish nation. They are the nowadays Kohanim. And we can't forget about them. Yeah, we're not in the land of Israel, we're not in the land of Shinar, not in the land of Egypt, Ammon, Moab, that's fine. The reason why they said it back then is because that's where the Jews were. Today we're in America, we're in Canada, we're all over Europe, South America, Australia. That's fine. You want to know what the key to success is? The key to success is to take care of the Kohanim, in quotations. Take care of the priests. Take care of the Jews who dedicate their lives to God, to the Torah, and to you, to us as the Jewish people. The Zera Shimshon is very clear. 3 times for those 3 acts of process, for those 3 categories. But it's not limited to. The only thing it's limited to is to the concept of helping those who in essence help you. Helping everybody, but not forgetting those Kohanim. And with that, I want to lead into the second Dvar Torah, the second piece of novelty from the Zera Shimshon that I'm going to share with us this evening. And that is, he analyzes again on the topic of tithing and gifts to the Kohanim. He analyzes a verse. And the following verse is in Mishle, Proverbs, chapter 14, verse 24. This verse, I'm going to show it to you on the screen now, begs an explanation. We're going to read this verse together, and we're going to see how this seems contradictory to every other teaching, says the Zera Shimshon, that speaks about the idea of riches and wealth. I hope I have your attention, because money gets everyone's attention, right? Okay, look at this verse. Chapter 14, verse 24 in Mishle, Proverbs. It says, Ateret chachamim oshram. The crown of the wise is their wealth. Ivelet kesilim ivelet. And the folly of the foolish is folly. Or in other words, the foolishness of the imbeciles is their foolishness. The Zera Shimshon has 2 questions. Question number 1 is, everything we've ever heard about wealth has nothing to do with being wise, right? As the saying goes, real estate makes a dumb person look smart. Okay? So this over here of the crown of the wise is their wealth, what does wisdom have to do with wealth? We know that there's obviously an aspect of wisdom in order to be savvy and businesslike to amass wealth, but we know there's a lot of mazel in it. There's tons of mazel. That's question number one, Zera Shimshon asks. Question number two is he says, what's it coming to teach us? That the foolishness of the imbecile is his foolishness. It's redundant in and of itself. And what's it coming to teach us, says the Zera Shimshon. So listen to what the Zera Shimshon says, and I think this is something we can all appreciate. He answers these two questions, based on the following three teachings of the Talmud. Bear with me, because it's beautiful the way he builds it, and we've discovered this. We already all know how to learn three pieces of the Talmud and then tie it all together with the Zera Shimshon. We're seasoned Zera Shimshon scholars at this point, right? Give me some thumbs up, everybody. Good, very good. All right. Listen to the three pieces of Talmud that Zera Shimshon quotes. Number one, Tractate Shabbat, page 119a. Famous. We know about this. The Torah says the vernacular of the word giving tithing, giving maaser comes from the word aser. Aser means 10. So the Talmud takes a play on the words. It says aser kedei shetit asher, changing the sin into a shin, meaning tithe in order that you will become wealthy, that you'll become rich. Meaning, the Talmud says, black on white, 119a Shabbat. It says, you will not lose, you will not be lacking when you give. To the contrary, you will only gain. Number one. Number two, Tractate Brachot, page 35b. The Talmud, in a very interesting way, compares the earlier generations to the later ones. And we're talking back in the Talmud. This was long time ago. Okay, this was not nowadays. This is 1,500 years ago. So the Talmud says, look at the difference between the previous generations and the later generations, the current generations. The previous generations had such a willingness to tithe their produce. They would bring their produce through the front door, which is one of the prerequisites in order to obligate fruit or produce to be tithed. But the current generations, they're trying to exempt themselves from bringing the produce to tithe their produce. You know what they would do? They'd bring it through the side door, through the back door, through their skylight, anything to avoid to bring to bring the gift to the Kohen, to give the charity, basically. Third piece of Talmud, Tractate Brachot, page 63a. The Talmud says that one who does not give the gifts to the Kohanim will unfortunately be forced to come and see the Kohen for an unfortunate matter. And that's why there's a juxtaposition in this week's Torah portion to the concept of a sotah. And I want to briefly give us an outline of what a sotah woman is, practically a woman who was unfaithful or potentially unfaithful to her husband. And what the Talmud says is that this man, because he did not come forth and bring the gifts to the Kohen, because he did not come forth and give his charity to the Kohen, he's going to have to come and face the Kohen for another reason. Yes, I see, as we see in the notes over here by Mrs. Friedman, that tzarat, that for when a woman gives birth and she does not give, we learned this a couple weeks ago, a woman gives birth and she does not give her sacrifice, she's also going to have, unfortunately, or he or she may have leprosy, and that leprosy is going to cause them to have to come to the Kohen to examine it, and then in essence they're going to have to bring their sacrifice anyway. So same idea, trying to cut the corner over there, you're going to have to come to the Kohen. If you're trying to cut the corner over here, says the Talmud, and not bring the charity to the Kohen that he rightfully deserves. Remember, he does not have real estate. He does not have land to grow his own fruits and veggies on. He's counting on you. So therefore, the Talmud says you're going to be forced to come and see him for an unfortunate circumstance. Now, let me just give you a very brief overview of what that circumstance would entail. And I just want to show you the verse in this week's Torah portion. Here it is. It says over here, Vehevi ha'ish et ishto el hakohen. Then the man shall bring his wife to the Kohen. And this is specifically speaking about the man who suspects his wife for cheating on him. As we know, that is a woman that cheats on her husband when they have been married according to Jewish law. is liable for capital punishment. It's a severe offense. Now, we're not going to speak about that, although we've spoken about it in the past. It's not tonight's discussion. Well, why is it only on the woman and not on the man? Well, we know because according to the Torah, a man could have more than one wife. A woman cannot have more than one husband. And we're not going to get into that discussion this evening. Maybe later within the questions we will. But the punishment for a woman who is unfaithful is considered to be treason and is capital punishment. So the Talmud and the Torah goes through an explaining on, well, how do we catch her? What did she do? She had to be warned against a specific person. It can't just that she can't be secluded with anybody. It has to be that she was seen with witnesses and warned against being secluded with a specific man. And then if she violates that, then she is brought to the temple, brought to the Kohen, and she is to drink a special potion, and that is basically water with the erasings of the Parashat, of the Torah portion of the Sotah, which we have in this week's Torah portion. She would drink that, and then she would have one of two. If she was really guilty, she was given a chance to admit. But if she didn't admit and she really was guilty, she would die. And if this was miraculous, obviously, and if not, she would drink it, she'd be fine, she'd be able to go home to her husband if they figure out a way to make shalom bayit, I guess, marital peace, and she'd be blessed with children. Okay? Explains that is the story of the Sotah in a nutshell that we read about in this week's Torah portion. Now, having said that, the Zera Shimshon now ties all three of these Gemaras together. He says, to answer our first question of what does that mean, that the crown of the wealthy is their wisdom. What does wisdom have to do with wealth? The Zera Shimshon says, one who gives charity will be blessed with wealth, as we saw in the Talmud. And he is wise for making the right decision for giving. It's his wisdom which is mirrored by his wealth. Because a person who has, it must mean that they are generous, explains the Zera Shimshon. But more than generous, it must mean that they're thinking with their senses, they're thinking rationally. I have a partnership with God. I have to make sure to fulfill my end of the partnership for God to fulfill his end of the partnership. And all he asks for is the 10%. That's number one. To answer the second question, so why is the fool so foolish? What did he do so wrong? Why is he considered to have made a mistake and act so idiotic? He says as follows, as Zera Shimshon. He says, you know what he tries to do? He's trying to cut a corner, this fool. He's trying to say, I don't need to give, thinking that he could outsmart the system, right? You ever met a Jew that tries to outsmart a system, right? Not me. Never met one of those, right? Never. Okay, this guy is thinking, I want to outsmart the system. I'm going to have a better profit because I don't need to give up my 10%. He is foolish, the Zera Shimshon says, on two accounts. Number one, he's going to lose financially, just black on white. It's going to happen. And number two, it's going to result in the anguish of him unfortunately having to come to the Kohen with his wife because of him suspecting her for potentially being unfaithful. And that's what the Zera Shimshon says. The word foolish is ivelet, is said twice over in the very same verse. A wise man is a man who is mirrored by his wealth, because I'm making the wise decision of keeping up to what God asks of us, of giving the charity, of helping the needy, helping the Kohen. He will have. But the fool trying to cut corners is going to have two unfortunate circumstances, both based on his foolishness. Number one, he will lose financially, not gain. And number two, he'll result in the anguish of having to take his wife as a sotah to the Kohen. So a truly wise person, says the Zera Shimshon, gives the tithes required of him. And that saves him from any future anguish and financial loss. And the fool, on the other hand, he's looking for the short-term game. He's looking to be a wise guy. Unfortunately, that's holding back all other gifts and all other reward that he may have, and he's only going to suffer at the end. So the Zera Shimshon is very clear this evening. This evening we're learning that if a person wants to have blessing in their life, they have to understand why God entrusts blessing with certain people. Now, I'm not saying this is a blanket rule. I'm not saying that everybody that has is because they give, because then it would be too obvious. But it's important to note that the mitzvah, the obligation of charity, is the only mitzvah that God says, test me with it. The only bachanoni na bezot, says the Navi, the prophet. That's the only mitzvah, the only commandment we're allowed to test God with. You can't test God on Shabbat. You know that, by the way, one of the blessings that a person gets by keeping the Sabbath is wealth. It doesn't make any sense, right? Because if I would work 7 days a week, I will obviously be making more than if I work 6 days a week, right? If I'm savvy and I'm able to make $1,000 a day, so let's just make a simple calculation. At the end of a week of working 7 days, I made $7,000. And if I only worked 6 days, well, then I only made $6,000. And you ended up at the end of the month and you're missing 4 days. That's $4,000 at the end of the month. That's a lot. So a person has to understand that when they only work the 6 and they rest on the 7th, Hashem will make up for it. But it's not a mitzvah. It's not a commandment that we're able to test God on. I know personally, there are many people on the class over here that can attest to it, that they, at a certain point in their life, committed to keeping the Sabbath and not working on Shabbat at all. With the intention of, you know what, it's the right thing to do. I'd love to do it. There's financial benefits. I can make the same amount or more by working 1/7 less. It's a great deal, no? But to many people, if not all, their income drops after they commit to keeping Shabbat. Why is that? Because God is testing to see, are you real or not? Are you doing it because you understand why I'm telling you to do this? There are spiritual, emotional, and physical benefits to us unwinding and turning off once a week, or you're just doing it for the financial gain. So Sabbath, putting on tefillin, lighting Shabbat candles, keeping kosher, all those things are great. And specifically the Sabbath is something which promises wealth, but it's not something we could test God in. You can't come to God and say, God, if I keep Sabbath, give me more. It won't work. But we are allowed to, explains the Talmud, explains the prophets, the Navi says, you can come to God and say, God, I'm giving. You have to give me more. And then God sees, well, you have good intentions. You know why you want more? Because you want to help more people. And he sees you keep your end of the deal. Well, he'll keep his end. It's something important. It's something that we see the blessing. We all want the blessing. And we always want to be on the giving end rather on the receiving end. How amazing can it be to donate things, to sponsor things, whether it's schools, academies, Torah study, spreading Torah study in honor, in memory of the deceased, of the living. These are feelings. These are good deeds, which are eternal, and lo yeh, it's yours. No one can ever take that away from you. God forbid, a person who even goes through a financial struggle. You can't think, well, oh, that 1,000 or that 10,000 or that 100,000 that I donated, I could have had now. No, you want to know the unfortunate truth? You would have lost that too. It doesn't, at the end of our lives, the only things that we will really have that will bring us to the world to come is what we've done for others, what we've given to others, how we've helped others in whatever way we possibly could. So my blessing to us all in the name of the Zera Shimshon is to overcome that hardship of parting with what we have, which is a normal thing. You know, there are many words for the word money in Hebrew. There's kesef, which means really silver. There's zahav, which really means gold. But the real word, the proper vernacular for the word money in Hebrew, does anybody know? Okay, I see some. Yeah, my mom knows. Very good. Damim. Damim is the real word for money. You know what the word damim means? The word damim, dam is blood. It's easier, so to say, as Shylock said, to part with a pound of flesh instead of our own money. Because when a person gains money, when they make money, we have this natural feeling, and it's for the good and for the bad, that it's ours. It's an extension of us. And it's so hard for us to part with it. So my blessing from us this evening in the merit of the Zera Shimshon is to learn how to overcome that hardship and that temptation, and to realize that really all that we have is what we give. The time we give, the emotional support we give, the physical labor we give and help others, and the money that we give rather than the money that we make and that we have and that we accumulate. May God bless us all to always be givers, to be givers with good hearts, with happy faces. And if you're going to give it anyways with a smile, because you're going to get multiple more times the merit by giving it with a smile than with a frown, right? Think of it. That same $10, $100, $1,000, $10,000, you're giving it anyways. Might as well give it with a smile. Might as well be happy. Find within us that joy and that happiness to really, really be able to be on the giving end and on the helping end. May God all bless us to always be on the helping end and really see all of our institutions and our schools and our Torah conduits and all of our Kohanim, our modern day Kohanim, those who are committed to Torah, committed to the service of the Jewish people, all flourish and be able to have the strength and the capabilities and the resources to continue to provide great Torah and Torah and mitzvot opportunities to the entire Jewish people. Amen v'amen. At this point, I'm going to allow anyone to unmute themselves if they would like to ask a question. Give me a moment. Okay, if there are any questions, you can unmute yourself and I'll take the questions.
Thank you, Rabbi.
Isaac Capuano. I know Isaac Capuano has a question. Go for it.
I wanted to wait. I don't want to be. I said maybe it's a statement or a question. I'm not sure. In reference to everybody having to give the same amount to Hashem. The tribe. So there was two cases where it didn't work out so good. That was Cain and Abel. We know what happened, and also has to do also with the two children from Aaron, where they gave the wrong, they made the wrong sacrifice to God, and then see what happened to them. That's properly done. So I guess maybe another message could be, or maybe Hashem is saying, well, you know, maybe I should let everybody do it like this way, not only for the jealousy and for that, but just so that they don't get into trouble. I don't know if anybody ever said that.
Yeah. It's a nice idea. It's a nice idea. Nice. Thank you, Isaac. I appreciate it.
Well, thank you for a beautiful lesson.
Okay, any other questions? I see here we have a question in... No, okay. Yes, next. Any other questions?
These were different situations completely because Aaron's children decided they were going to do the thing with the fire pan because they wanted to get more from. So that's not about tzedakah. That was about arrogance.
Right. Right. Any other questions on tonight's Torah portion?
Rabbi, I have a question, please. We are told, I can't remember where the pasuk comes, a 10 titon, right? It's like a double language. So,
Naton titen lo.
That's right. So is it so that if we can, we should give between 10 and 20%?
Yes, we had a class a couple weeks ago about that.
That's right.
That the basic obligation is 10%, and that it's up to 20%. 10% is the minimum, and 20% is the maximum. Anyone who wants to give over 20%, we said that you need to get a special permission to give over 20% to charity, and that's for very, very, very wealthy individuals. But yes, 10% is the minimum, up to 20%.
Great. And then there was one other thing I wanted to mention about the blessings that come from Shabbat. We're told that when we have the 3 seudot, so the first Seudah on Friday night, we have 2 challahs, and they represent the blessings that one would get for the Sunday, Yom Rishon and Yom Sheni, the Sunday and the Monday. And then on Shabbat morning, or rather afternoon, when we have Seudah Shniya, then we would again take 2 challahs, and they would bless the Yom Shlishi and Yom Revi'i, which is the Tuesday and the Wednesday.
Nice.
And then when we do Seudah Shlishit, we have another 2 challahs, and that would bless the Yom Chamishi and Yom Shishi. And then, of course, Melav Malka, when we do that, and we only need 1 challah, that would bless the 7th day, the Shabbat itself. So actually, I think it would be fair to say that keeping Shabbat properly with the Seudot, including Netilat Yadayim, Hamotzi, and Birkat HaMazon, does bring one blessings of Parnasa. So I just wanted to add that, even though there's no guarantee, but it's a very good, more than Segula, I would say. It's a partnership that the Shabbat brings blessing into the entire week coming forward.
Beautiful. I love it. I love it.
Thank you. Thank you for tonight. It was awesome. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you. Any other questions? Thank you. Yes, Mrs. Friedman.
I'm never gonna.
It's not a
Oh, we have 3 Mrs. Friedmans on. Sorry, let's do one at a time. Go.
So it's not a question. It's just to reinforce what you said about giving tzedakah with Megillat roots. It's to emphasize, and when Avimelech was able to help the people and he decided it was enough and he left, what the punishment was, not only did he lose his life, but his 2 sons. And then we have Naomi that comes back and she says bitter. And only when they came back and accepted their lot in life with Ruth did they get back to be in the right fold of Bnei Israel. And we have David HaMelech from that union of her good advice. So that happens in reality. So it's not just what someone's interpretation, but we have a Megillah that we just finished the Chag with.
Beautiful. Beautiful. I love it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, now Eileen.
I was just saying, now I'm never going to stop making challah. Okay. And I just wanted to thank you for a beautiful class tonight. It was very, very special, as you dedicated it to my nephew with my sister-in-law and brother right on. And I'm very moved tonight. And I'm just moved by this class. I'm moved by your wisdom that you share. And then I'm going to tell you all a little secret, that this is my Torah portion when I was 40 years old.
Oh, very nice.
Also, okay. That was way back when. Now it's time to relearn everything all new again, which I'm grateful for.
Very nice.
So thank you for an amazing class tonight.
Thank you. Very nice. So just before I take the next question, I just want to remind everyone, tomorrow night we have a very special class on chinuch, on parenting. And parenting includes grandparenting. And tomorrow night is going to be a very, very special class. We have as a guest, Mr. Chaim Hirsch, who we heard about from 2 weeks ago, which was amazing. And tomorrow we're going to be specifically discussing the Shabbat table, how to optimize your Shabbat table as one of the greatest tools that Judaism has, that parenting has to offer. And Chaim has perfected this, as we'll speak about tomorrow. And I've personally sat at many of his meals and witnessed. He has it perfectly, systematically mapped out. I don't want to spoil it for tomorrow, but I would highly suggest to come on, whether it's for your own sake, for your children's sake, for your grandchildren's sake. Chaim's father-in-law is with us. Barry, say hi. And I think Barry has been at a couple more meals with Chaim than me, just a couple more. And he could attest as well that the Hirsch family's Shabbat meals are second to none. And I've spent meals all over the world for Shabbat at the greatest and the most prestigious of rabbis around the globe. And it is very, very awkward to say that the Hirsch family's meals are more inspiring than even the greatest Torah sages' Shabbat meals, and we'll soon see why and how. So that's tomorrow night. Please join us. You're going to love it. You're going to really love
Rabbi,
it.
may I add that everyone's invited. just let me know and I'll see that you have a formal invitation.
Rabbi, I can personally attest to that, having been there, except for your wife's Moroccan fish, which is the best, the best.
Thank you. Thank you. Okay, I saw Yehuda has a question.
I'd like to try your mother's Moroccan fish.
Yehuda, you have to unmute yourself.
Right here.
I can't hear you yet.
You can unmute him, Rabbi.
I'm trying to. He's not letting me. Unmute? No, it's not letting me. Okay, after Yehuda. Okay, any other questions before we end?
I just wanted to say thank you very much, Rabbi, for the class tonight. It was very enjoyable. I learned a lot. And thank you for the dedication to our son, Scott.
Thank you. Thank you. May his memory always be remembered for the good, bringing inspiration and a prayer to you and your entire family. And really, may his soul have an elevation from all this great Torah study. So we really appreciate you joining us and sponsoring tonight and tomorrow night's class. Thank you.
Thank you.
Amen.
Amen.
Thank you.
I muted myself.
Okay, Yehuda, there we go.
I mean, we should also have simcha when we give the check to the IRS. That means we could give more maaser. Right? And then the biggest thing is when we say in Hebrew litchaten, it means 10, 10, 10, which is the most important one to give to is your family and your love, because ahava is have. It's also give me, but litchaten is latet.
Very good. Let me just, for those who don't understand the Hebrew, litchaten means is the word that we say, the translation of the word marriage, or to get married. And it's very similar to the word to give. And marriage, as Yehuda is saying, is all about giving.
Amen.
And all relationships are all about giving. But specifically in a marriage, one's always giving to their spouse and giving. And if we remember that's what we're supposed to be doing, we won't get frustrated when we keep on doing it, right?
I'm sending it to the young ones, like you.
You're young also, Yehuda. Don't put an age.
That's a
Pleasure.
beautiful
Great
lesson.
Amazing lesson.
Thank you. It's great to have everybody. Always a pleasure. And we'll see you tomorrow night, 8:30 p.m. And thank you, everyone, for joining us. Thank you.
Thank you. Looking forward to tomorrow night. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Bye.
Erev Tov, everyone. Good night.
Oh, he signed off.
I said, okay, Rabbi, you brought it home.
Thank
You
you.
always do.
It was wonderful.
Yeah, it was
So
very, very, very
meaningful.
good. Thank God.
Very
Happy.
meaningful, very emotional for me, and I know